Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Forensic Fix, a podcast brought to you from MSAB, where we invite guests from the industry to discuss the latest news in DFIR, current issues, and a general chat about all things digital forensics and investigation. So I'm your host, Adam Firman, tech evangelist here at MSAB. Today's podcast sees an old colleague of mine and a friend join the show. So I'm delighted to say that we have Jim Metcalfe on the show. Jim will be known to you in the UK, who have been unfortunate enough to be on one of his 7 Safe courses where he's probably picked you out to answer a question, or internationally via an X-Ways training course. So Jim's career goes back to August 1994, sorry about that, Jim, when he was wet behind the ears and joined the Royal Air Force, starting in the military police. So Jim served in various roles during his time, but got involved in digital forensics in November 2011, whereby you served there until you left the military, completing your full service. Since the Air Force, Jim has continued with his passion of digital forensics, and he became head of digital forensics for ForSecure before joining PA Consulting as a trainer and a consultant, delivering training for 7 Safe in digital forensics, incident response, and other cybersecurity skills. So in July last year, 22, you joined X-Ways as an instructor and product support, which is your current role. So Jim, I've given our listeners a small insight into your impressive career. For those of people who, I'll be very surprised if they're not aware of X-Ways, but can you give them an insight into yourself, your past, your career path, and how you have got into your current role, please, Jim?
So let's go way back. And hello, everyone. My name is Jim Metcalfe. I'm a instructor at X-Ways Software Technology. So my interest in computing goes way back to when I was a very, very young man. And we're talking about in days of ZX Spectrums and BBCB micros and stuff like that. My dad, bless him, he bought me a CGL M5. Now, for those who've never heard of that, it was a rebadged sword, spelled SORD M5. So it was a great little 8-bit computer. And my dad bought me this machine and he said, there you go, son. I'm not buying any games. You need to sort it out for yourself. And I was like, well, get a job and stuff. He goes, no, you got to learn how to program it. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And like every kid at the time, I went to the local newsagent and bought a copy of PC Weekly or Computer Games Monthly, I think it was. And at the back of that, you had a couple of pages of basic programming you needed to then type in onto your rubber keyboard and spend all day doing that. And that's what I did. And you sit there and spend all day on my rubber keyboard typing that program in just to find out it didn't work. So there was loads of debugging I had to do. So that was the first part. And typed all that in, debugged it, and then only to find out that, guess what? All it did was roll a dice, and you had to guess what the dice was. And you spent all day doing that. And if you didn't save it to your tape, as soon as you turn that machine off, kapow, off it went. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about that was that whole process of debugging, trying to work out why things are working, and more importantly, work out why things weren't working.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, for those who are old enough to remember, peek and poke commands on a Spectrum. You could get extra lives. You could do whatever you want just by applying little changes to the assembly language in the background. And then you could sort of break that game and then get infinite lives and good stuff like that.
So cheating, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not cheating. It's exploitation. That's the correct terminology, I believe. But from that, went to college, did the usual good things. But I always wanted to know that I wanted to join the military. And that's what I did. So I went to university for a year. Wasn't really my bag, to be honest. I loved the social life. However, the actual learning part of it just wasn't for me at that time. So I joined the military at age 21. In fact, I joined the Royal Air Force. My first day in training was my 21st birthday.
What a birthday present.
It was. Getting shouted at and learning how to make bed packs and all good stuff like that. Great days. But I went into the Royal Air Force Police, not to be confused with the military police. That's the Royal Military Police, something completely different there. But the Royal Air Force Police, what particularly drew me to that was I knew they always had a very strong part in the terms of cyber security, as we call it now. Back then, it was just plain old computer security, and that's the career path that I really wanted to go down and start looking down that cyber security route. I never really knew much about forensics then, because back in the mid-90s, digital forensics wasn't really a thing, I suppose. But I stuck with it and did all the really boring, horrible jobs that you do as a sprog just joining up, and stuck with it, got myself promoted, and then ended up working in what's termed information assurance. So I was looking at risk management, accreditation document sets, providing risk on cyber secure assets, providing cyber security risk advice, and so on and so on. Even doing some investigations.
So it's really good grounding then.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Now, my lucky break came after doing that job for about 3 years, and you do a post in the Royal Air Force of 2 to 4 years, depending on what type of role it is. The lucky break coming was at the time our Royal Air Force Police network was managed by the Royal Air Force Police. Because we had police sensitive information on there, we didn't want just a normal technician coming in to administer our network, because usually it's about their mates, a lot of stuff that was on there. But they looked at there was a call for volunteers to come in and administer the network, and I was like, looked at the orders, and I was like, we get to do these courses: be a server administrator, be a network administrator. And I was like, I'll have a bit of that. So I went and did that. Got some great training, some great experience in learning how to administer and run a Windows domain network, all the usual things, password administration, stuff like that.
But sort of having that understanding helps in the IR world, really, doesn't it? Because if you have an understanding how to administer it, you know how to detect things.
100%, yeah. I mean, as my later role, when I went into the digital forensics and incident response roles, I knew how a system administrator would be running a network. I knew how to do it because I'd done it previously in the past. And this is a point I'm going to sort of go into later and talk about how do you get into digital forensics? What's the really good ways of going into it in terms of career path? And certainly the way I did it, for me anyway, worked out really, really well, because I had that base grounding in knowing how things worked. And I think that's really important, particularly in digital forensics. I do find there are some investigators that they just don't know how things work. They've been shown how to collect the data and analyze the data, but they don't understand the full context of why that data's there and what it's doing in terms of on that particular application, on that computer, and so forth.
Yeah, and that's really getting people to expand their knowledge beyond pressing the button, isn't it? Because
Absolutely.
like you say, if you have to go and present that evidence, normally saying I press the button will not cut it in a court of law.
No, absolutely not, and quite rightly as well. So I did that for about 2 years, and now the Royal Air Force Police had a digital forensics unit. It was called the cyber security. What they call it back then? Cyber forensics team. That was it. Can't get mixed up now. So many different acronyms. Cyber forensics team, it was called then. And at the time, it was really difficult to get into. You had to. I wasn't saying it was a closed shop, but you had to be a senior guy. So you had to be a sergeant at least. I was just a corporal at the time. But I was really keen to get in there. And eventually I managed to wheedle my way in there somehow and did the training in there. So it was the usual investigations in there that you'd expect to see in a civilian police law enforcement environment. So, unfortunately, the usual child sex abuse material investigations, theft, fraud, a lot of fraud. All those various types of investigations you expect to see. Plus, as well, we did security investigations as well. So we didn't call them cybersecurity incident response, but it was basically those type of investigations that we're assisting with. All very much those static deadbolt forensic zone, which was cool.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be one of Tony and Brian's boys and girls. So I was lucky enough to do the Tony Sams and Brian Jenkinson foundations in forensics computing. For those listeners out there that have done that, they understand why I say lucky. Did you do it, Adam?
I don't think I did. No.
You'd have known. You'd have known.
No. Yeah,
like
I definitely didn't.
6 weeks MSE module compressed into 2 weeks, but my goodness, you learned some stuff on that. We had additional pressure because at my unit it was a requirement. You had to pass the exam at the end of that 2 weeks, or else you were expected to move somewhere else. So there was that additional pressure. But yeah, that was really good because it was very much, here's a computer, how does a computer work? This is how data gets saved on a computer. This is what a computer will do with this data and change it. And how do you change it back? What is a byte? That down to that level, and then saying, okay, here's a byte, but what does it mean? So to use our old colleague Steve Shepherd, what does it mean? So it was down to that fundamental level, and that gave me such a good grounding for the rest of my forensics career, because even now I've got their book and I still refer to their book, and that was 2012. So because so much is still relevant, NTFS is still NTFS, so there's no real changes in that, but that's such a great reference I can go back to and look at that, certainly. So I did that up to my pension point. So I hit my pension point in the Royal Air Force, and I thought, time to move on, see what the big wider world is like. Plus, running around the desert in my mid-40s just didn't appeal to me at all. I struggled in my 30s. Let me do that in the 40s. So I left, did my first job, worked for a great guy called Ben Morris. I don't know if you know Ben at all, Adam.
I don't think I do. I may have met him, but no, not off the top of my head.
So Ben is very high up in the sort of payment card forensics world. So that was my first role, albeit it wasn't there very long. It didn't really, I wouldn't say I didn't fit, but first job coming out of the military, it was always
it's a big transition, isn't it? It's a big transition.
You found probably the same when you left the police, didn't you?
Yeah, so when I left the police, I joined PA Consultant 7 Safe, where I worked with Jim and, like Jim said, previous colleague Steve. And it is, I think I was glad that I had yourself and Steve, who are both sort of ex-government, and you sort of understood that transition and helped me with that. But it is still a big culture shock, yeah.
It is, and I was always I wouldn't say blasé when I left the military, that how straightforward it would be just to come in and mix in and try and do that transition. But I did find it harder than I thought it was going to be, certainly, because the Royal Air Force wasn't that regimented. It's not like it was being in the army or the other services. We were technically civvies in uniform, but because you're in that culture and that nice structured environment, to suddenly to go away from that in no short order can be a bit of a shock. And I totally understand why some people really struggle when they leave the police, they leave the military, or any of those other structured careers. It is definitely a shock. But fortunately, it's getting more and more recognised. There is more and more support out there. It wasn't too bad when I left, but I can imagine if you left in the early 90s or the 80s, it must have been difficult. Yeah, very difficult. So then I moved on to Force Secure. There was a multitude of roles I was supposed to do there, which didn't quite come to pass. But one of the main things was vehicle forensics. So when I joined, they were partnered with Burla, so they didn't last very long. But we did use the Burla tool a fair amount. Burla at the time was, I suppose, still quite its infancy, still quite infancy. But being a North American product, it's very focused on North American vehicles. So I can imagine a lot of our listeners in Western Europe and, just the rest of the world, really, rather than North America, who've used Burla will probably understand that. Just the sheer lack of support for your Renaults, your Fiats, your
the European brands,
cars, cars like that. But on a side, that was good for me at the time, because then we could use a lot of reverse engineering techniques on infotainment units, because that was my main focus, was attributable data. So coming out from vehicle infotainment units, where the vehicle's been, how far it travelled, even potentially for ways we can attribute users being in that car or individuals being in that car. So some quite nice jobs out of that. Learn how to chip off, get some chips off the board, see what flash images we can get
Great
out.
fun.
Yeah. Sometimes I was even soldering onto the actual boards themselves, and not quite JTAG, but almost like JTAG, communicating directly with the storage memory on the board, and that was good. And then using a COM port connection to copy off log files and SQLite tables. How about that?
Yeah.
Obviously, without selling too much, have a guess what my main tool for that was?
It
was X-Ways. This is where I'd been using WinHex quite a lot the whole of my career, and so different courses and using it when I was in the Royal Air Force for certain specific tasks where you really needed that, get down to that hex level. But then really my main sort of real usage was using it with the vehicle forensics. So doing that very base, low-level hex examination. And X-Ways forensics, that's the most ideal tool for that, I found.
Yeah. Just to keep you up to date, Jim, now our tool imports. So XR1 and Examine both import Burla, work very nicely together. What a lot of people don't realise is Examine, although it's an analytical tool, it can import other data formats such as Burla, Grayshift, and you don't even need a full-blown XRY license for that. No. But you've still got the capability of, because I hear a lot of people talk about the Burla platform and they prefer reviewing it on another thing. So it's just good to give people choices, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've used XRY, so I've used XRY and Examine in the past, as you know. So it was I used to use my primary tool, to be honest, but obviously going too much, giving you a pat on the back there, MSAB. But that was my sort of main primary tool for phone forensics, certainly. I used the other tool at the same time for comparison of results. And obviously, as we all know, with mobile forensics, not every tool would have supported every phone back in the day. So when I started back in the early 2010s, we had a whole multitude of different phone formats and phone operating systems, rather than just the two, Android and iOS, that we see these days. But yeah, it's that big suitcase that used to come from MSAB, full of connectors. We actually used to use those.
Yeah. Thankfully now, I think, like you say, you can pretty much run it down to two cables and some specialist ones, but you don't need the full briefcase anymore.
Yeah, and thanks to the EU, we'll be just given in 10 years' time, you'll just need a USB-C cable, and that's it.
Exactly.
Unless you pull out some old devices from a bedroom drawer and stuff like that. Yes.
Yeah.
But no, that's good. So that was really my first really proper usage of X-Ways forensics, was using it for the vehicle forensics, and I was, like I say, getting some weird and wonderful file systems out. So weird and wonderful at the time, QNX, for example, not supported by any tools at all at the time, although it is now supported by X-Ways forensics, and had to basically manually pass through that particular file system, finding the files of interest. For those of you who've done vehicle forensics, you'll find a lot of the really juicy artifacts are in unallocated space on those storage. So trying to get that nice juicy file system metadata isn't always a possibility. So that's some good jobs with that. There was some quite interesting work. Then I decided time to move on, and one of the things that I always wanted to do was deliver training. And I knew of 7Safe, albeit at that time I'd never actually attended a 7Safe course. So all my previous employers had never actually sent anyone on a 7Safe course. So
they were notoriously hard, though, weren't they? Because
they still were.
They were, and my colleagues attended them. And when it was your turn to attend them, like you say, going back to the Brian and Tony day, it was like no one's ever failed these courses. and then you'd go on them. So the pressure was there. You weren't going to be chucked off the forensic unit, but you would have the stigma of coming back being the only person to have failed them.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I threw my CV in, see what happened, and then I got a job out of it, which is awesome. So not straight into the fire. Yeah, it was straight into the fire. So I was delivering some of the courses straight off, which is great because obviously they're all structured, they're ready to go. So there wasn't really much I need to do in terms of developing those courses at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I soon really got the bug for it. I really enjoyed delivering training. It's one of those things where you can spend 6 weeks on a forensic case, and as you know, you get all that evidence together, you present it in the most beautiful way possible, and then you find it just gets put into unscheduled, and you go, well, we didn't actually going to use it, and you go, oh, okay, fair enough. But with the training, you'll have 15 delegates sat in front of you, and you know that by the end of those 4 days or 5 days, however long that course is, they might have hated you as an instructor, they might have despised the course, but they would have learned something. And that's the main thing. They will go away with a bit more knowledge than they started. Hopefully, they pass the exam at the end of it, so they'd have to tell their bosses when they get back, or their quality managers on the ISO. But yeah, so that was really good. What was nice about that role too was it was dual hatted. So as well as delivering training, I was still a practitioner. So we were still going out, we were still doing digital forensics work. We were going out to do incident response, which at the time was something relatively new to me. I hadn't done an awful lot of it. But incident response it's great fun. Getting to an organisation and helping an organisation recover from that breach or compromise. Again, something very, very satisfying. Did you come on 2 jobs? I can't remember if you did, Adam, or not.
Yeah, we went on those, and mainly it was sort of event log hunting, wasn't it? Really, and capturing the live data. Yeah,
and listen up, forensicators. So the log files are awesome sources of information in your normal static investigations as well. I'm surprised how many analysts don't actually go diving into the log files. Windows event logs are just awesome. Get in there and have a look. Obviously, I can only speak for X-Ways because I teach X-Ways forensics, and that's my primary tool of choice now. But you can go into the events mode on X-Ways forensics, and it just peels all those events logs for you, and you can easily filter on them. And don't forget, there are other tools out there that come with the machines. If you're not using PowerShell with event logs, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get in there, use the tools there. But one of the things I liked about the incident response side as well is, as well as getting your hands on the keyboard and actually dealing with that and investigating what the cause was, you're also managing the incident as well. So you assist in that organisation to manage the incident. Quite often, I would go down either as the sole practitioner with backup back at the office, or myself and a colleague. But then we were using the staff that were working there. And this time, rather than what we're saying this, maybe the haphazard way they were going with the actual response, direct them where they needed to go and what they needed to do. It was great. The thing I didn't like it was you do that 3-4 days of engagement, get them back up into a safe working environment, how they were, and you get a shake of the hand, and that bit off you go, and then you'd offer them other services. Would you like us to do the in-depth analysis and stuff like that? And you'd be like, hello.
Yeah.
So no, I did that for a few years, and that was great fun. Yeah, really enjoyed working there. Got to that point though, I've been there 4 years, and it's possibly a sort of leftover from the military. We used to get posted every 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Different roles, and then maybe a bit of itchy feet was going on. Maybe try something else. And then I saw the role come up for the instructor with X-Ways software technology to be an X-Ways forensic instructor. So I just, again, put the CV in, see what happens, and then, well, here I am now currently delivering the X-Ways training. So again, really enjoyed this training because we
Hmm.
get a lot of people that have never used X-rays forensics before. There is a, should we say, a reputation, slight reputation with amongst the community that you can't just dive into X-rays. It's a difficult tool to get into and use. With the way we teach it, within a couple of days, hopefully people realise that, well, actually, it's not that difficult at all.
Yeah. I think here in the UK, sort of my first introduction to it was at the College of Policing,
Uh-huh.
sort of the core skills in digital forensics. They use it there, and my lab didn't have X-rays, but I found it really intuitive to use and actually enjoyed it.
Mm.
But my sergeant, who was on the same course as me using it though, who wasn't a practitioner but wanted to come and pass a course so he had an understanding, he does not like X-rays.
Well, it's the classic, it's X-rays forensics is not a push button tool. There are buttons you can push to get the information that you want, to get the analysis out you want, but there's no overriding one big button to add your evidence object and press analyze or whatever it is, and then expect a nice report to be turned out at the end. It is a tool for a practitioner. It's not an operator's tool. So you need to
Yeah,
get in there. You need to know what you're looking for. But when you know what you're looking for, you're going to get that so tied down to the evidence that matters, what you need. You can then present it very straightforward in the report that comes with X-rays. The X-rays forensics report is simple, clean, and it's awesome to do. It's so easy. I have used other tools. I'm not going to name them, but the reporting on them was absolutely, what a performance.
yeah,
But with certainly with X-rays forensics, file, in the case data pane, great report. All the files and of evidence objects that you've labelled to be included in the report, they're there, and that's it, along with all the metadata.
nice and simple. So,
That's it.
so what's a normal day for you then with X-rays? What's a normal day look like for yourself?
So when I'm delivering training, like yourself, we sort of, although I'm based in the UK, I'm delivering training to all the way from the west coast of America and Canada, all the way across to Singapore, and we're looking at expanding my role. So I'll be delivering potentially to Australia, Korea,
Yeah,
Japan. So I do get to work some unusual hours, should we say?
yeah,
So if I'm delivering to Europe and the UK, our courses start 8 o'clock UK time, so 9 o'clock European time, and a nice solid 8 hours of learning. So come sit down, open the top of your head because we're going to chuck some knowledge in there, 100%. And then for the Americas, I'll be starting mid afternoon, so usually about 1:30, depending on who our clients are, and then we work through to about 9:30 at night.
yeah.
So it's good though. The first time I delivered it, I had jet lag. I was like, this is really weird. I feel like I've just stepped off of a plane, but like everything else, get used to it.
Yeah.
That's quite nice though, because I get the mornings free. So as long as I get the 8 hours in, everyone's happy.
Yeah, and like you say, I do miss shift work in the police at times because when you sort of work a 9 till 5 Monday to Friday role, you detest going to the shops at weekends and things
Mhm.
like that. So sometimes shift work is beneficial, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now my daughter's left school now. It's not so much of a problem either. So she's 16, my daughter now. Unbelievable. Where's that gone?
Yeah,
Uh,
where has
but,
that gone?
but yeah, so it's even better now. I work from home as well, so that's good. Uh, we do deliver the course in person. I'll be honest, I do prefer delivering training in person because you get to really see how people are getting on.
Hmm.
You can see from someone's body language straight away if they're not getting
Yeah,
something. Whereas with a camera off online, you don't get that. Uh,
I think also for a delegate, they get a lot more out of it being in person because the network and sort of hearing other people's experiences is huge.
oh,
And
definitely,
that's yeah,
definitely. Like I say, they can go out for a lunch together. They can meet up in the evenings if they want. Uh, but yeah, with online, you don't really get that. Don't really get that.
yeah.
Online's fine though. I mean, a lot of people actually prefer to be delivered online,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah.
It's quite amusing. Some online experience I've had. One wasn't for teaching a course, but it was my previous company, PA. We did an event for service leavers, so people leaving the military, and we'll do a Teams meeting, and you'll see them all online, and we chat away. And every now and again, someone will talk online and go, "Yeah, like, this is what I do in this situation." Blah blah blah. Over. And you go, "What? Over? Did you say over? We're on Teams meeting. We're not on a
Yeah.
secure military net. What are you doing?"
The transition, like we spoke about.
Uh-huh. But I've had people drinking glasses of wine on the courses. I've had people smoking, and they sort of go like this. "Oh, is it if I smoke?" I go, "Yeah, sure, house. Do what you want. I don't
Yeah.
mind." But yeah, so no, it's interesting. Quite often, though, as probably the same, you've delivered online training. You do get the grid of black screens where the cameras go
Yeah.
off, which I'm cool with. Just every now and again, let me know you're still there.
Yeah. But yeah, it can be, it's hard work delivering online because you're pretty much talking to yourself for 8 hours sometimes. Even delivering webinars for an hour is hard work. And
Mm-hmm.
it's surprising, you can go away and talk to someone who isn't sort of aware of sort of online teaching. You can sort of say, "God, I'm absolutely shattered." And there's sort of look of shock on their face. They're like, "You just sat by your computer all day. How can you be shattered?" But it is hard
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, if you say to someone, just talk to that screen for 8 hours,
Yeah.
and they go like, "Really?" Yeah, just talk to the screen for 8 hours, and also make sure that you're talking about the right stuffs at that point. So yeah, it is. I would say it is more difficult than delivering in person. I would say,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's fine though. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
some people like it. Like I say, they're quite happy just to sit in front of a computer and just listen to what the instructor's saying.
Yeah. And also, obviously, we don't really face it here in the UK, but when you're talking Australia or the US, then real geographics become involved.
Yeah.
Sometimes for organisations, it makes far more financial sense for people to go online because the travel in those countries is just unbelievable for most UK Brits, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is cheaper though to send me on business class than send 5 delegates on economy to me. So that's what I always say to them.
Yeah.
I'm up for that.
Yeah, I thought you would be. So obviously, you're not practicing anymore, but knowing you, I know that you'll still be keeping your hand in and sort of keeping an eye on the industry. And obviously, you're meeting delegates who are in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are the biggest challenges that are facing sort of the digital forensic landscape at the moment?
Well, I haven't done mobile devices for a couple of years now. But as I was finishing doing the mobile devices a couple of years ago, it's access to data. And we're going to see that soon in the computing world. Certainly, I mean, as you know, you're a mobile forensics tool provider. Your biggest challenge is just getting the data. The analysis of it will still be the same. A picture is still a picture. An SQLite database is still an SQLite database, regardless of what the context of the data is. But it's all about the access. And I think certainly in computing as well, the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see such a major change in how we can access data. I mean, full disk encryption we're seeing that a lot more now.
Yeah.
I mean, don't judge me, I bought a Dell laptop a couple of years ago, and that came with full disk encryption built in, as every forensic analyst will do when they buy a new machine, I'm going to image that, see what's on there first. And I did a full physical acquisition, and guess what? It was all encrypted. And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. A lot of talk still about cloud-based. So we're going to see a lot more of the cloud, definitely. In enterprise, the vast majority of larger organizations now are going towards cloud-based solutions, aren't they? The days of season and on-premises Exchange server, I think, are numbered, to say the least. But certainly that's going to start moving towards the home environment more.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're doing some serious gaming or other sort of high resources hungry applications like, video editing, sound editing, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you really need to have 16 gigs and a spanking processor on your laptop when most of the stuff you're doing is cloud-based?
Yeah. Well, this goes back to, and I'm sure you listened to it, the episode with Phil Cobley, where he's still got in his vision that basically we're just going to buy think boxes that just thin clients that just. And it's funny you said about gaming, because Google have already tried it, haven't they, with Stadia, or however you pronounce it. And I know Microsoft are looking at it with Xbox, and that's basically shifting all of that resource onto the cloud, and you just use a thin client to log in and play it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've started playing Starfield. I am a middle-aged gamer, which is a bit sad. So, any listeners out?
Me too.
Yeah, any listeners get turned over by Captain Biscuits? That's me.
But they're not going to admit to that now, are they?
So I've got a reasonably meaty PC now, and that works okay for that. But like I say, I just upgraded my broadband a couple of months ago, and I've now got 280 megabits per second now, which is quick. But then it's not the quickest I could have gone for. I could easily go on for a gig here, no problems at all. I'm just tight, didn't need it. But if you've got those gig plus broadband connections, that's going to cope with streaming that video, isn't it? And
of course it is.
And if you're a gamer, for example, then you won't get the lag or anything like that you do now on slower connections. So why do you need all those resources at home? But interesting. Because I recently upgraded my PC. I didn't upgrade the PC as a whole. I just treat myself to a new graphics card and a processor. And going online and reading about which is the best. Do you get an AMD? Do you get an NVIDIA? And you're like, oh, okay, I'm dealing with this. But there was a common theme going through about the fact that those sort of sales now have slumped.
Yeah.
Because people aren't buying them like they used to. Now, is that a case of the whole cost of living thing where people haven't got that money anymore? Or is there just not that requirement so much?
Yeah.
Yeah, is there not that requirement so much? So, interesting times. I mean, certainly, I totally agree with what Phil said. I mean, about you will just basically buy a thin client for the majority of use cases. Yeah. And certainly in enterprise as well. Windows did the Windows Cloud PC. So you couldn't just log in through a totally underpowered laptop or desktop and then use all the resources that will come with that Microsoft 365 package online there. So,
but which Google have been doing for a fair few years now with their Chromebooks, isn't it? But
absolutely.
Unfortunately, you had to use the Google suite of products, which put most people off.
Yeah. And I love a Chromebook when it comes in that temper evident bag and comes on my desk. Like, give that to someone else.
I used to quickly sign myself up for another job.
That with the Surface Pros. Oh, it's a Surface Pro turned up. Who could I palm this one off to?
With a side edition of a Windows phone.
Can't beat a Windows phone. So that's definitely going to be the trends. It's going to be access to that data. That's what's going to stop you being able to carry out the full analysis like you've done previously. But like I said, with mobile devices and computing as well, the files, the actual data that we do when we do get it, it'll still be the same type of data. The analysis techniques will still be the same. It's just going to be that access. I've not got my hands on iOS 17 at all yet. I'm waiting for Josh Hickman to upload one of his images, and we'll have a go at that. But we'll see exactly what we can and come off.
Yeah. No.
I still lament the days when we went from iPhone 4 to 4S. There's still I still well up when that happened. We went from full file systems to logical.
Yeah, it was a monumental change, wasn't it? And took a long, long time.
Did It took a long time, and it takes time for obviously guys like yourselves at MSAB and the other company to catch up with just those advances. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unfortunately these offences will happen. And what's the latest reason for a backlog? Well, that individual they were quite robust on their updating program on their own personal devices, and you can't get the latest iOS 17 full file system out yet, so
Yeah.
you can't get that.
Yeah.
It's not knowledge C anymore, it's a new one. See, I can't keep up. So
yeah, it's constantly changing, isn't it? But knowledge C was the gold mine, and like you say, that's changed now. But yeah, I think I agree with you. It's going to be access. That is the biggest. Whether it's computers, phones, vehicles, it's always going to be access, isn't it?
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So if we haven't put people off, what advice could you give to people who are just starting in the industry or considering a career in this industry, apart from don't do it?
No, still do it. Digital forensics as a career, I would totally advise anyone to do it, because you do such a varied workflow. Unless you're unfortunate enough to end up in let's image 50 mobile phones today, dong, 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 dong.
Yeah.
That sort of organisation. If you not even specialise, but then become more just a general practitioner, you're going to see such different jobs. You're going to see so many different things. The fact that it just changes all the time, you have to keep constantly learning and understanding how this new technology works. It is a career where it's never going to stand still. So I definitely recommend if anyone's interested in that. My advice I would always give, though, learn about computers. Know how computers work. Understand why computers are doing a certain thing. Getting the information off the computer at the moment is still relatively trivial. Let's do that image. Let's get those files off. But then you come across these certain types of files like event logs. You come across a prefetch file. You come across a link file, and you see all these different link files in different locations. The question that they should be asking is, okay, so why is that there and what is it doing?
Yeah.
If you can understand that, then you can understand the context of why that is an important file. I've been taught stuff in the past, and people really go on into great details about certain artifacts. And I've sat there and I thought to myself, so what? Why am I really interested in that? How is that going to put somebody at the scene of a crime? How's that going to show someone's stolen intellectual property from an organisation? And it doesn't. But then the real nuggets of really good information tends to get overlooked, because some people don't understand really how those computers work and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Don't think that you leave college and then go straight to do a university degree in computer forensics is necessarily the right path. It's a path, but it's not necessarily the only or the right path. I haven't got a degree. I did a year of electronics degree back in 1993. But has that held me back? Well, it hasn't. I took the slower route, maybe, but I did the route which I felt was best for me, where I was learning about how computers worked. I was learning then about security around computers. I did the information assurance side, learning about how to apply cybersecurity controls and so forth. And then that led me in then to the digital forensics world, where I did have an understanding about how these artifacts come to be. So when people are talking about shortcut files and how they worked, I was like, yeah, I get that. I understand why a shortcut file gets created for that reason. It's to make the user experience better. That's the whole point of it. Why is the prefetch files there? It's there to make the operating system run quicker. For then the user has that nice, wonderful experience of, I've clicked on WordPerfect on my Windows ME Edition machine, and look how quick WordPerfect goes up.
It opened in 2 minutes.
I know, it's amazing. I don't need to spend out for 512 megs of RAM. But it's that's why they were brought in. But understanding that, you can understand, well, that's that reason. So why have I got this information on there? Well, it needs to know how many times it's been run and what dependencies it needs, so it knows that's an important application to then prefetch all those items in. And then when we get our digital forensics head on, we can then turn around and say, we can now use this to our advantage, but we're missing one major thing. We don't know which user that relates to those prefetch files because they're user agnostic. They're a Windows system file. Then we need to know about how the other parts of the user artifacts that are created and then tie them up. Get into Windows event logs. Find out when a user was logged in. Find out when they logged off. Because it's in their team. You can go in there, you can find it. But again, that draws me back to my instant response stuff that I was doing. Because, again, I was never really taught it as terms of static forensic investigations. I don't know about you, Adam. Were you ever shown to go into Windows event logs or log files?
No, not at all. We sort of covered them. But most of our forensics was Deadbox.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, on joining you guys at 7Safe is when I sort of realised, wow, there's so much data in these event logs. And literally they just help you build that timeline of events.
Yeah.
Because like you say, you can find a system artifact, but you can always use your event logs to sort of keep you on track.
It's such one of these key artifacts that, like I say, it tends to get overlooked.
Yeah.
But also as well, for anyone who wants to get into this industry, like I say, you can go down the degree route, that's fine, or you can go down learning through experience, be expected to do some of the lower end jobs, be a networked administrator, do the password resets, do the setting up new users and so forth. You'd understand how users get set up, you'd understand the issues with passwords and stuff like that, which again, if you're going down the more instant response route later on down the line, then you've got that understanding there as a system administrator. So you then understand when you go to an organisation and the sysad goes to you, our password policy is the company name plus 3 numbers. And you go, why have we done that? That's ridiculous. And they'll say, it's done at board level. They insisted that we do this. And you go, okay. And that's cool because then I can sit in the board and deliver my recommendations at the end. I'm not caring because I know I'm not going to get fired by that company.
Yeah.
Because I'm there to advise. Definitely that's advice I would give. Don't look at the straight academic path. Have a look at effectively what's an apprenticeship and going in and gain that experience, gain that knowledge.
That's some great advice. And over the last month in the industry, has anything grabbed your attention? I obviously know you've been busy teaching, but has anything sort of come out over the last month that's grabbed your attention?
Nothing really over the last month that's grabbed my attention. I sort of keep my nose to the grind as much as I can, but there's nothing that's really jumped out the last month. I've been busy teaching this month. But there's nothing really that sort of jumped out, to be honest.
And sort of going back to the last question about advice for people, sort of just be part of the community, like be on Discord, keep up with podcasts and stuff, and that's sort of how you stay knowledgeable in this industry, isn't it?
I'm certainly for someone that's coming into the industry early doors. I think back to 2011 when I really first got involved with this side in digital forensics. There was none of this out there. There was no forums. There was no. I mean, you could go on to get a bulletin board. I think there were still some of those knocking around.
Yeah.
And some RSS feeds. Show my age now. But there was no way you could go to a Discord server and ask a question. And then you get your Andrew Rathburns, you get your Alexis, and you get all these people that are willing to give their information out. They give out some brilliant advice. And you'll get an answer. And there's so much good stuff I've seen on the Discord server, which you invited me into, which is very kind of you, Adam. And I'll keep an eye out for any X-Ways questions, and I'll respond in there when I remember to go on. But certainly, there was, and things like these, you get the podcasts. This is a great podcast, and I listen to Alexis as well, and that's a brilliant podcast. There's some really, really good resources out there that just weren't around 12, 13 years ago. So I'm not saying it's a golden time for digital forensics, but it's a good time to be getting into the industry.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And like you say, that the industry just keeps changing every day. Mm-hmm. So you're never going to get bored of the work. It's always going to be there. And like you say, access is going to change, but the analysis part and the actual puzzle solving is still going to be there.
Oh, that's the best part of it, the puzzle solving. You can get asked the question, can you find me details about how this particular did this? And you go, okay. Well, obviously, without going to case specifics, but I was asked to give opinion on how walking and movement data was stored on an Apple device.
Yeah.
So all in the Knowledge C, in the health database as well. So you get things like stride length. You get things like walking gait and stuff like that. Some really good little artifacts in there. But obviously, what you got to do is test it. That's one of the great things you have to do. You as the examiner, have to test this and make sure that what's coming back to you is correct. Because it's not going to be one of the developers at one of the software companies is going to stand in the dock trying to explain this. It's going to be you.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you know what you're talking about. And what I did is I had to walk up and down my garden with my test device, walking up and down. That's fine. Now, I'm a very tall 5'8", so it's 172 centimeters for everyone else. I'm not like you, Adam. But the individual in question was like you, Adam. They were over 6 foot. So I was like, okay, how can I then test this to say, okay, let's get a 6-footer in? My neighbour was watching me walk up and down the garden thinking, what are you doing? And he's a good 6'2". And I said to him, just jump over the fence, mate. Hold this phone and walk up and down for 10 minutes. I'll buy you a beer. How does that sound? He's like, okay. I didn't tell him what the case was for because he'd have gone a bit, I'm not doing that. But yeah, and then I got the information that I needed off of that. And that's just one of the things which is, it's great. A part about this job is you do need to go out and do this because you do need to make sure that what you're presenting, what you're talking about is truthful, honest, and accurate. And you've got to do that. And the only way you can really do that is by testing it yourself.
Yeah. And that leads brilliantly onto the final question for today. And the final question is always provided by our previous guest, which was Kevin DeLong from Cyber Social Hub, who has asked, in your opinion, what trait must a good digital investigator have in order to be successful?
Good trait for a digital forensic investigator. It's probably been said already before, but you've got to have that inquisitive mind. Yeah. Every time you come across something, you've got to ask yourself, how, why, and when. How did it get on there? Why is it there? And when did it get on there? And without answering those questions, then you won't be able to get the result you need out of the analysis. Yeah. You can find the smoking gun on a computer. I found one of my jobs, it was just a text file. That's all it was, just a text file. It had these weird like link files that end in .onion. Now, at the time, this is like 2012, I had no idea what these were. So I had to go and do some research. Oh, Tor. Wonder what that is then. Do a bit more research. Oh. Yeah. Then I could find then, so why is this particular file on there? So I got into my dirty machine, popped in these URLs, and suddenly. And
as dirty machine, Jim means a test machine, just for clarification there.
Yeah, a test machine, not a dirty machine. And guess what? There was a load of pictures in there I'd seen somewhere else on that computer. So I stopped what I was doing, threw it away. And I had to then do some research on a test machine then to then see how Tor worked, find out what artifacts left behind. Very few. Because guess what it's built for? It's built for privacy. And but then from that, I could then see, okay, how did this file get on here? Why is it there? Is there anything that can connect that file with anything else? Let's have a look at the prefetch files. Oh, look, this guy opened up the Tor browser at a minute to midnight. And then a minute later, he opened up Notepad. I wonder why that was. Is there any other artifacts that could determine the course of actions this guy did? Oh, what was in the hyperfile.sys? Oh, guess what? It's that holdout text document. Yeah. So that was an interesting interview explaining to that guy how Tor worked. And he went from happy smiley face to no comment face, which he did the rest of the time. But no, so that's it. You got to have that inquiring mind. Don't just rely on what you see in front of you. Ask why, ask how, and ask when. You'll make a good examiner.
That's great. No, that's good. And that brings us to the end of the podcast. I just want to say a massive thank you, Jim, for giving up your time. I know how incredibly busy you are teaching all different time zones, but it's been great having you on the podcast. Thank you.
No, awesome. Thanks for having me. And come on, say now. Simon. Thanks to everyone online. There you go.
Yeah. Thanks all. We'll catch you soon. Bye bye.